Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our very first meeting of the year, Strategic Planning and Policy. So, yeah, good morning to you all. Good to have you here and those that are watching online as well. Right, I'll call for apologies first. Do we have any apologies this morning? None? Okay, we'll move on. If we look at the disclosure of members' interests, I do have one. Actually, GL Events is listed as an on-licence renewal in our agenda this morning. So I just wanted to register that conflict, but I didn't really feel there was a conflict unless anyone else has an issue with it. Any other conflict, Mike?
And probably the same, but in the dog control policy, Cambridge Primary School stated in there as a dog prohibited area. So it's my only. Can I still, is there a conflict?
No, it's not a conflict.
Right,
I think we're fine, but thanks for acknowledging it. Thank you, Mike. Any others? No, that's great. Thanks, everyone. Any late items this morning? No? Okay. Confirmation of order of the meeting. Got a recommendation there. Thank you. Roger's going to move that. Claire's going to second it. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. All right, if we move to the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, which were held back in November, 29th of November, do we have any amendments, changes? Claire is saying no, so that's a good sign. Anything else? Oh, brilliant. Okay, can I have a move and a second to move those? So we've got Councillor Brown and Andrew Brown seconding. All in favour? Carried. Okay, we'll move to our first item, which is the appointment of the Housing Subcommittee. So Kirsty is going to introduce this item for us.
Through you, Madam Chair, kia ora koutou. Happy New Year to you all. I'd like to request that this report be taken as read, but just highlight a couple of points, if I may, please. You'll recall that at the end of November, this committee endorsed the Waikato Regional Housing Initiative Strategy and Plan on a Page that had been prepared specific to Waipa, and staff recommended that we come back to you to establish a formal subcommittee to effectively replace what had formerly operated as a working group of elected members. So that is the purpose of this report. Attached to the report is Appendix 1, draft terms of reference. These pick up what had been prepared for the earlier elected member working group, but they also incorporate feedback that we'd received from elected members last year, ensuring that there is connectivity to central government objectives in respect of housing. And they also pick up that requirement to drive the development and delivery of an implementation plan to give effect to the Waikato Regional Housing Initiative Strategy and the Waipa Plan on a Page specific to housing. So happy to respond to any questions that you may have. You'll see in the recommendations that we have left blank the membership for the subcommittee and will be guided by elected members there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. And look, this has been a really important, I guess, subcommittee in the past. There's been a lot of initiatives over the years. In particular, I look at the Kāinga Ora work, Bridge Housing work, the Waikato Affordability Housing Group, Habitat for Humanity, who've been working with. So we've had some excellent presentations over the years. And I guess really what we're wanting to do here is establish more of a formal group, but also get some momentum going, given that it's a really important subject for our district right now. So yeah, so we've got a recommendation here, of course, receiving the report, which is reasonably straightforward, but we also need to appoint the housing subcommittee, as Kirsty has said. So I believe that those that were on the existing committee are more than happy to continue, but I am interested to see if there's anyone else that wanted to join. I haven't heard from anyone regarding that, but Claire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to stay on the committee. I must say, I've been incredibly disappointed that we haven't actually seen any action on it. Yeah, it seems to be ages getting policy in place and you know, setting up those relationships with those bigger agencies and that. Yeah, I'm really hoping we might get, as you said, get the momentum going. But the question I was going to ask is whether or not there were any external parties that you think might be interested in being on the committee. I know we had, I think, Nick Green, from Habitat for Humanity used to come along, but, I was wondering if there's any other suggestions. Yeah, because, these are really influential people, and they also know the strings to pull and things like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So look, what we did see over the past few years was an ongoing many presentations from those groups, and I think we want to continue that. I do think we have to be careful that we do have a level or degree of independence or no conflicts that could arise through some of these external groups. So I'm very keen that we continue inviting those groups that of course are doing a lot of work in this space anyway. Now, I do have, just in terms of Roger and Andrew, I know you had expressed an interest in staying on the group as well. So just acknowledging that, and then later on we'll formalise it. But Roger.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, you're right. I'm certainly interested in continuing on that. But I have a general question, and that is something else that comes up later on in the agenda is Papakainga. And does the interest and topic of Papakainga come under this housing group? If that is the case, then possibly Councillor Takina should also be a member of that group.
Okay, I'll let Kirsty respond. I've got some thoughts as well. Thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair, so Papakainga, it does feature in that Waipa plan on a page. So obviously there's a specific work stream underway presently in terms of Plan Change 23, but Papakainga is the provision of housing, so it does feature within the ambit of that plan.
I'm pleased for that clarification because I think it should do. But then the second part was the Councillor Takina should probably be a member of the group as well.
So I guess just in terms of Papakainga, because we are going through a formal process, I was very keen just to let that process run its course. We need to keep, as councillors, keep a very open mind, I think, around what the outcome or what our community's outcome around that plan change might be. So I don't want to preempt anything at this point in time. Perhaps we just let that process take its place, and then we can look at that perhaps a bit later in the year once we've gone through that, if that's okay with everybody. Mike.
Yeah, is there a need for, I'm happy to be on there if there's a need. If it's just to make up a number, then it's pointless, and I don't want to just be PC about it. But if there's a need for an additional person, happy, but otherwise I'm happy not to do it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Philip?
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. Just for my benefit or for the benefit of others, who else is on the committee outside this room, of this room?
So we didn't have any external parties. It was an elected member committee only. So there is the opportunity to include members going forward. And I think, as I said before, we may choose to do that once we understand what our work program is likely to be.
And it was a mixture of staff and elected members. So we had, actually Kirsty, I think, used to come along, and Ken and various staff members as well. So it was kind of like a hybrid model. Yeah, but I think now we're trying to formalise it. And
because could it be worthwhile suggesting a developer or something like that within our area, or?
I think that would be inappropriate. So as I said before, Philip, we need to keep a real degree of independence.
Yes.
We don't want any conflicts of interest. Working towards a Waipa plan, I guess.
I'd like, sorry, just one last thing. I'd very much like to be part of that committee too, to not to make up numbers like Mike said, but to be part of that committee too, if that's possible.
Okay.
I was just going to say, in response to what you said, Phil, like, even though we didn't have membership, we did have some really good presentations, from the Bridge Group, or the Perry Foundation. Yeah, and also another really good one was from Antanas, that architect, because he was describing how it might be possible to design affordable houses and things like that. So in a way it collected, specialist knowledge and got input from important players that could help the committee work out what to do.
Yeah. And urban design and all that sort of stuff.
Andrew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to be on the group, and well, hi everybody as well. It seems like a long time. Just in response to Claire's comments at the beginning about the lack of anything of real substance in terms of building, like I totally agree. However, of course, the issue is funding, and we just do not, as a council, have the revenue to support the actual building of houses. Our role is to facilitate and I guess make contact and liaise with the people who do have funding. So yeah, let's hope we can get some of that really going this term.
Absolutely. Thanks for those comments, Andrew. Roger.
Yes, I'd just like to come in with a view that there's going to be a lot of housing development going on in Cambridge. And I think it's an issue that the Cambridge councillors really should be aware of. I'd certainly welcome Mike on the committee. We've got the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development issue in Cambridge with that large block. We've got the affordability issue. We've got the densification issue. There are a number of important issues specifically to Cambridge, which actually apply to TA as well. But I just think that the Cambridge councillors should be involved in looking at the issues and strategy relating to that side.
Thank you, Roger.
So I'd welcome Mike and Philip both on that committee.
Okay, what I would like to see, of course, is a balanced committee across the district. So look, I don't disagree with you, Roger, but I think there's equally as many important issues over in Te Awamutu. I think there are 4 developments in Te Awamutu. We're not necessarily involved with all of them, but we want to have an oversight over many of them as well. So I would like to see the balance remain over the district in terms of councillors. I see Councillor Gower has something to say.
Well, I'm just saying I quite like the mix of people on that committee that were originally there that covers like the district without being too top heavy.
Okay, so I'll just outline the names we were at. So obviously we've got who were on the committee. So we've got, I'll do the Cambridge ones and the Te Awamutu ones. So Roger and myself, Cambridge councillors, and we had Claire and Andrew Te Awamutu, and then Susan as mayor. Don't really attach to. So at the moment, yes, if we were to include another Cambridge one, it would be great to include another Te Awamutu one. So I just want to keep it balanced for fairness, if that's okay with everyone.
About size as well.
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to add that if we're not careful, we'll end up having the whole council there.
That's right.
And that's kind of counterproductive to the whole point of having a subcommittee.
Yeah.
I'm quite comfortable with the list you've listed there, Liz. I think it has a really good balance of representation across the community. So I'm comfortable with it as is.
So you're talking about just the existing committee?
The existing committee, yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Everyone agree with that? Okay, because what I'd like to do is formalise that if possible, please. So if I just look at the resolution, so the members to be voted onto this committee will be councillors Roger Gordon, Claire St Pierre, myself, Liz Stolwick, Susan O'Regan as mayor, and Andrew Brown. Everyone in agreement? Okay, and we also need to formalise the chair. So I was happy to chair that committee unless there's a nomination for somebody else.
I'm not asking about the chair, but I'm asking about Takina, whether or not he should be on it as well. That's all.
He hasn't not indicated to me at all. Yes,
Okay,
yes. And unfortunately, he's not here today. So otherwise, you're right. I had a question mark around that as well. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But perhaps we could look at that. If he had a desire, we could perhaps look at that later. Yeah. Susan.
I'm comfortable with you chairing that committee. Liz.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
appropriate.
Okay, so we've got, so Susan, are you happy to move recommendations A and B? Yep, and Claire's happy to second. All in favour? Carried, thank you. Mike.
Well, can I just make a comment on Claire's comment? And I guess it's just us being aware of Takina and what we might end up loading on them, because everything is going to, everything's iwi relations, etc. now, as it needs to be, but he's one guy and he's got a business practice too. So I guess it's just something to be aware of.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lou, did you want to make mention?
Through the chair, I just feel it's very important that we have this committee, but as I agree with Mayor, that we don't need it to be big. We're going to face some very interesting period, and a lot of people out there that are on fixed incomes are going to need, especially elderly people, some affordable housing. It is quite an issue. I deal with this in the RSA, and there is quite a number of people at the moment, and it will only get worse, exacerbated with inflation.
Completely agree with you. Yeah, Councillor Brown. So good comment. Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is our draft plan change 14, Hautapu Industrial C10. Good morning, Tony. Happy New Year.
Okay. So this is, I just won't go through it. I'll take the report as read if I can, but just by way of the summary. So this one's been on our radar for some time, as you'll see. I think we have reported on it previously, just at a low level. It relates to C10 growth cell in Hautapu, and we've got some owners there who are quite keen to progress the development of it. But the problem we've got at council is it's not funded. It's on our long-term work program, but because of the priorities around plan changes, we haven't put this one into imminent funding. So what we're now seeking through this report is an in-principle confirmation that council would pick up a plan change that is presented to us by a consultant in a format that we're comfortable picking up. And the reason that we need this in-principle confirmation is to give confidence to the landowners that they can commit investment to preparing the plan change. So effectively, they'd prepare it on our behalf. It's not a private plan change as described in the paper because there's some constraints around that. So it's a little bit unusual, but we see this as the way forward on this one. That's the summary, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, questions? Mike.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, my question's just around, this is a low-cost option to council. Can you just expand on that a little? At what point council takes it over, what it is going to cost compared to if it was a private plan change?
So if it was a private plan change, we could recover all the costs under the Resource Management Act from the point of notification up to a decision. If it was appealed, then we cover those costs. And so that's no cost to council. So the cost, there is some provision we put in the 2023-24 annual plan around funding once it goes notified. So we have put, I think, $30,000 in that in the annual plan. That should cover the cost that we'd expect. So the cost would be, we've got staff who can take it through the process once it's notified. They can summarise the submissions. So the cost to council there would be appointing commissioners to hear it. And I'd be expecting that we'd have elected member commissioners and probably 3 of those or 3 or 4 of those. So that's within the budget that we've put up.
Thank you. That answers your question. Yep, Roger.
Yeah, it's a question, clarification. As there is, my interpretation, a supply and demand issue here that's going to come into this consideration, do those councillors that are on the plan change 17, do they have a conflict of interest which perhaps should withdraw from the discussion on this issue?
That's a good question. So we don't have a plan change for 14 yet. So 17 is underway and those commissioners have been appointed. For this one, I guess that's going to have to be something that will be considered by the consultant when they pull the plan change together. Very good question. And one of the things they'll be looking at is the supply and justification for this plan change 14. So if that's justified in the plan change, and when we receive it, if council accepts that justification for rezoning, at that point, then we'd look at appointing commissioners and asking them to step back. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Tony? I guess when I often out at various meetings and things like that, industrial land comes up on a very regular basis, and our lack of it, the perception that there's a lack of it, I think is probably the best word. So to have or to enable more land choice and availability, I think is definitely a good move going forward. So we've got a recommendation A-B as well. Do I have a move and a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Gower, Councillor Pettit, all in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Right, we're on to our district growth quarterly report, and I see Group Manager Wayne Allen is here. Good morning, nice to see you.
Good morning, councillors. Just give me a moment. So this is the district growth and quarterly report, 1 October, 31 December. So as you know, it's just a quarterly update on growth related matters for Waipawa District at all the various national, regional, sub-regional district levels. First part, I'll get Kirsty to talk a little bit about what's happening at the national level. So if you want to start off, Kirsty.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think fair to say that there is separate reporting in respect of submissions on the RM reform and water services. There were no submissions lodged in this quarter, but I would like to highlight for you a matter at a regional level, and that is the Waikato Regional Policy Statement Plan Change 1 that was notified in October of 2022, and this has been progressed to give effect to the requirements of the National Policy Statement Urban Development. At the time, a staff recommendation through to the Chief Executive was that Waipawa District Council not lodge a formal submission, and that we'd had staff input through the Future Proof Partnership, and Future Proof were lodging a submission in support, primarily relating to input that had been had and some capacity issues across the organisation. However, our legal advisor through Plan Change 26 from Tompkins Wake has made a recommendation that council now participate in the further submission stage of the process to effectively preserve council's position. So just wish to flag that here. Submissions have been extended through to the 15th of February. So we would be looking to have that lodged by the Chief Executive under delegated authority with a formal reporting back to elected members at the next SPNP meeting. Essentially, it will simply be endorsing the submission of Future Proof, subject to any changes that are required to give effect to the National Policy Statement. So just wish to flag that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that's interesting. Yep.
Just some other highlights in that section 3.1 of the agenda, so your page 38. The resource management reform. So as you know, the Natural and Built Environment Bill and Spatial Planning Bill is out for public comment. There will be a workshop session that we're planning with you on the 14th of February, so I won't go into it here. The deadline, we've managed to get an extension through to the 19th of February. So there's some opportunity there to workshop with you our thinking in relation to the submission period. So that's been quite useful in getting that extension of time frame to that submission period, because it was earlier February when that submission period was closing. In terms of just moving forward through the report, the district plan side of things. So in the district plan, there's updates there in table 1 in terms of all the plan changes. So I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll just take those as read. So there is separate reporting on district plan updates. And you've already had an update from Tony in relation to one of those plan changes. The resource consents, so in terms of the resource consents side, in terms of numbers for quarter 2, 134 as opposed to 117 in quarter 1, so slight increase in resource consents, but in terms of doing a bit of a comparison between 1 September 21 to towards the end of January 22, in the same period, 1 September 22 to towards the end of January 23, we were down 25%. So just to highlight, there is some degree of reduction. LIMS have gone down slightly between the quarters, 293 in the last quarter compared to 234 processed. Moving forward through the report.
So Wayne, I might just stop you there. So
questions, sure.
Claire, yeah, good. Here's a question.
Thank you. I'm back in section 3.2 actually under the sub-regional planning initiatives. It talked about the Three Waters project, and it says there's no further project progress. How's that detailed business case going for that wastewater treatment plant in the northern sub-region? Because, you know, I thought that was going to be, I'm sure that wasn't completed last year. And yeah, I've just been gobsmacked as to how long it's been taking actually. Yeah. And then my other question was on the next section 3.3, the monitoring of development that Future Proof is doing. I just wanted to give some feedback, Wayne, about the outcomes that may be anticipated through that work, because when we've been doing hearings for larger developments in Tuamutu, like one of the big questions is how many sections are actually available on the market now? Because we get feedback from people to say, oh yes, that development's been consented and it's proceeding, but that sections actually aren't on the market, and that is the critical thing. It's all very well to do all this detailed monitoring for a certain type of information, but is it going to be the information that's really going to make the difference? Yeah. So, and I know we've had discussions with you about it when we've been in a panel, and you're saying it has been really difficult because it's not information that councils hold. Yeah, like councils have got access to, all of the resource consent side of things, but often it's actually the land agents, it's the real estate agents that know how many sections are on the market. And if that's the case, this work should be trying to, get that information in there.
So just some observations from me. Look, I don't have any update on the Three Waters business case. I'll get that to you. I'm not sure if it's separately reported through to the Service Delivery Committee.
Through the chair, I think Dawn is able to respond to that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I didn't see her in the back there.
Come and swap chairs. Oh, you'll need mic.
Sorry, Morena. With respect to the wastewater detailed business case for the southern part, that has been largely completed, but is now subject to the outcome of the northern business case. And that northern business case servicing North Hamilton, those communities, is nearing completion. And at that point, once we know the scenario of that, we can then relook at the southern part. So work is progressing, it has slowed, but that's where things are at the moment.
And just one more comment, and this is in the plan changes, because I see on page 41 of our agenda, or page 4 of the report, draft plan change 21, which is this affordable housing and intensification and strengthening urban design, has been deferred. And I was pretty shocked to see that actually, because this is a critical plan change. Now, I was a bit reluctant to have that plan change be sort of a collaboration with other councils, because we get into the difficulty of we've got to fit in with other people's priorities. And I'm just really worried that this plan change is going to be a victim of that. We're desperate to get this plan change through so that we can have some tools about affordable housing. And at the moment it says hearings likely 2023/2024. Any update? I mean, I just can't emphasize how urgent I see it, and whether or not it can be given a bit of a hurry up.
Right. I think I'm jotting down all the questions, Claire, but going back to that second question of yours in relation to monitoring of development, of course, section 3.2 talks about two pieces of work that's been undertaken there in terms of study of industrial land supply, and it wasn't residential in demand over the future-proof sub-region being complete, and high-level update of the sub-regional's population projections. In terms of, I hear what you're saying in relation to how many sections are in certain areas. And as you know, we don't hold that information. We would have to go and track that down with those that do hold the information, and numbers of real estate agents do, or just a visual site visit to have a look in certain areas. I will raise that issue with David Topman and see what he's got to say in relation to the future-proof strategy and inclusion or incorporation of that type of information. I'm not sure if there's anything else, Kirsty, on that. Yeah, the third question, again, look, I do hear you. Plan change 21 was going to be a signature plan change for us until plan change 26 came along with medium housing density. It took the resources and the time from our staff. We did defer that through the part of last year. We were looking to scope that up. I'm not sure if Tony's got any more, but we're looking to scope that plan change 21 up in relation to what needs to happen and when, and the resources required. It would be, I would have thought, yeah, whether we even get a hearing in 2023, I doubt that, but scoping it up and resourcing it and working in conjunction with our partners, Hamilton City, as I understand too, are looking at affordable housing. So Tony, have you any further elaboration?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. It's a good question, Councillor. So the other thing that's happened is we have had a submission on Plan Change 26 seeking to include affordable housing within Plan Change 26. And so that's raised a legal question because the mechanism for doing that is debatable whether it's in scope or out of scope Plan Change 26. The first thing that we need to do, so Wayne's right, we're looking at rescoping Plan Change 21, but in terms of affordable housing, we first need to understand if the submission on Plan Change 26 is in or out of scope. If it's in scope, then Plan Change 26 could conceivably be a vehicle for looking at affordable housing. If it's out of scope, then we pull it back in. The other complication, if it's in scope, then we'd need to wait until the outcome of the hearings for PC26 to know what we're going to do with that. So it's a bit of a waiting game at the moment.
That's a really great explanation. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for that update, because I think we can see now there's a range of dominoes that all need to kind of be followed to be able to enable things as we work through them. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you carry on through your report, Wayne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just going further into infrastructural development, I'll really just take that as read. It's just a bit of a summary in relation to what our development engineers are up to in terms of the growth cells. Again, development contributions. So look, we've just got the statistics in there again, and I'll just go over that. So we did issue 54 DC notices, $8.6 million worth. Now, we don't have a big recovery effort in that quarter because of the construction season. The construction season finishes generally towards the next quarter. And so the recovery of $19,000 is, as Tony says, it's to be expected because 224Cs are realised more at the end of the construction season. And we have 57.2 million outstanding. We're still doing work in terms of that information we talked about last time, about the revenue and expenditure for particular growth cells. Working with our finance team on that. They're busy at the moment on annual plan stuff, but we've got time available with them over the next few months to work with that on getting that information together. And as I said in the report, we're looking to trial Cambridge North growth cell and the effective remaining balance left on that cell versus the available expected capacity. So hopefully we'll have a bit more information on that in the next quarter, but I do acknowledge you're wanting more information in that space.
You Wayne. Mike.
Just a general question, just around the APL site. When we first got the sort of blueprint plans, there were several large buildings, I think maybe 3 or 4. Is there any is there any further development in the pipeline around the extension of those factories?
I'm not aware that we've got any new building consent applications in, no. The next point, I guess, is the building compliance side. So we've detailed the numbers of consents that have been issued. We had 466. So in there, that includes amendments, which are not included in Appendix 3. In terms of the same period last year, 2021, we're down 20 applications. For code compliance certificates, we issued 294 compared to the same period last year of 274, we're up 20. Okay, so yeah, I guess in terms of trends, so the numbers of consents, yeah, slightly down from previous year. Monitoring and enforcement, to really just take that section as read. We did have issues with the dog poo bin collections, so we're just monitoring that and just making sure that our contractors are clearing them as required by way of contract. That's probably the key points, Madam Chair. Councillors.
Thank you, Wayne. Any other questions? No. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that report. Actually, it was very, very good. We've got a recommendation, of course, to receive your report. So Councillor Coles is going to move. Councillor Gordon is going to second. All in favour? Carried. Right, we're going to move to our next item on the agenda, which is the psychoactive substances, and I'd like to welcome Mika and Melissa. Good morning to you both.
Kia ora, everyone.
So actually, we'll let you introduce yourselves.
Kia ora koutou. My name's Melissa. That's new. Kia ora koutou. My name's Melissa. I'm the Manager Strategy, taking over from Kirsty, who was previously in the role.
Hi everyone, I'm Mika. I am a graduate strategic projects driver under Melissa.
Yeah. Great. Oh well, I think I know that I have met you, Melissa, a couple of times, but yeah, new year and all that. So yeah, welcome both to you, and yeah, we'll get into the item.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to take the report as read, but summarise a few points. So the purpose of the report is to seek a decision on whether to repeal or review the Waipa District Council psychoactive substances policy, which relates to legal highs.
Thank you. Okay, so any other councillors may have some questions around this. So we'll start with Councillor Gower and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair.
Okay, all the other way around. Well, Marcus had his hand up first.
I'm just wondering, so legal highs aren't around now, but what happens in the future? And could we change this around to maybe look at like vape shops and like nicotine contents, nicotine levels and vapes and stuff like that? Because now we have lots of vape shops in town and stuff.
So through you, Madam Chair, in terms of vape, that's actually not under this act. It falls under different, and that is covered under Council's other smoke-free and vaping policy. Yeah, this is a little bit different. But in terms of repealing it versus keeping it, so to keep it, we have to go through the engagement process, the full engagement process, whereas repealing it, we don't. And currently there are no products legalized in the country, and it is quite a process to legalize them, which is why most likely there aren't any right now. So staff recommend that if there were to be any legalised later, it would be a shorter process to create a new policy at that time, rather than every 5 years review what we currently have, which is not doing anything. Any other questions?
Right. I think it's a fairly straightforward matter, as long as everyone's feeling pretty comfortable. But Lou, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Absolutely not. I would support the motion. I think that there's some positivity here. I was actually going to ask about vape shops myself, because that's a very, very pertinent issue at the moment, particularly in our town. And we've got quite a number we've got an application for a shop being changed in Tiamea right now for another vape shop. So, and I know my daughter's a teacher at the college and they do have a major problem with it. But look, I will happily move the motion as it currently stands at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I recall back in 2014, we had a very lengthy conversation and a number of conversations around psychoactive substances. So when I saw this, my hackles went up sort of straight away, because as Councillor Gower said, you know, what happens if they make if there's a kind of return as such? And we did see implications, particularly in other neighbouring towns. Hamilton East, you know, was, you know, affected greatly. But, you know, if it's council's, you know, will that we repel the policy, that there's no need for it, and we feel that we're all comfortable with that, then we'll proceed on that basis. I just wanted to just double check in with everybody that everyone's comfortable with the recommendation as it is. Yeah. Did I see your hand up, Susan, or not? Yeah.
Just going to note, following on from Councillor Gower's comments about vaping, I've just sent you all an email that we sought some clarity in terms of what levers could we pull around vaping and in terms of that bylaw space. So Diana has given us a little bit of advice there, just heads up.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a very topical issue in our district. Claire.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Marcus. They're like, what's going to happen if a product is approved in the interim? But I guess we would just simply have to look at, public consultation again and, reinstating it. And in fact, you know, since this was originally introduced, I think the community is seeing the dreadful harm that's caused, you know, by certain substances. And whether or not they really want them or not. But yeah, I mean, I can see that there's a weakness there, Marcus, so I agree with you, but on balance, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we've got Lou who's moved the recommendation. Can I have someone to second the recommendation, please? Councillor Pettit, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we are slightly early, but look, let's break for morning tea, and we will, and then we will move into the dog control policy. So if we're back at 10 o'clock, please. Okay, everybody, I think we're just on 10 o'clock now, so welcome back. And yeah, Graham, good morning. And we're on to the determination to review the Waipa District Dog Control Policy and Bylaw 2015. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Yes, this is the start of the formal Local Government Act process for reviewing the Waipa District Dog Control Bylaw and also the Dog Control Policy. Your decision is required to determine if we should review it now or leave it for up to 2 years, which is when we would normally be reviewing under the Local Government Act. But of course, you will recall we did an awful lot of early engagement with the community last year. Now, that didn't reveal a huge number of issues to be added, or indeed any to be removed. So if you're satisfied that the list of issues in Appendix 1 are correct, and actually most of them are statutory anyway, and that the bylaw is appropriate for managing dog control, and that in itself is statutory as well, then we can move forward with this review. The recommendation is that we do it this year rather than leave it till 24-25. Most of the difficulties are likely to be with the schedules of the dog control policy for prohibited areas and exercise areas. Those are likely to be contentious later when we come to the public consultation, so just flagging that. But I think that's going to be the case whenever we review this policy. So my question then is the committee satisfied that we should proceed on this basis? Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Okay, we've got Councillor Gordon with a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Graham, totally agree with you that it should be reviewed now. I think the perception of many of the people out there is that it's already under review, especially some of the commentary that I've already received. And I think if we were to defer it for another 2 years, I think possibly we would be criticised for pushing things under the carpet, whereas we're best to take this opportunity, review it so that we can consider all the feedback that's already occurred and review it adequately for the future. So yeah, certainly support your recommendation. I'd definitely move that if we could.
Okay, thank you, Roger. And Lou?
I'm totally in support of Councillor Gordon's statement. And as I say, I think we had quite a number of submissions when we actually put policy out. I think we were quite successful. I think you find that a lot of people found during lockdown that they've actually created or got a dog or a pet, particularly dogs. And there's quite a demand, I think, out there to see this law actually finalised so that they can actually put submissions in. And I think moving it forward is a very positive thing, and I'll second the motion that we actually proceed.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So just for clarification, so we haven't gone out yet. So we've not asked for submissions yet. We just went through a kind of an engagement several months ago and received enormous feedback, mostly through Facebook. So we're very well aware that this is a very topical issue, yep. And of course we want to try and progress this these updates and changes, I guess, if there are to be any. Sooner rather than later. So I think I'm getting the general consensus that we're all in agreement.
Yep.
Yep. And Councillor Gower, before I put the motion, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm in agreement. I think it's a great idea, but let's not forget the cats again as well. Just because there is a ton of cats, especially around Kiki, that are just like.
I don't see the word cat in any of the information in front of me, but we'll take that into consideration. Absolutely. Okay. So we have a mover, Councillor Gordon. We have a seconder, Councillor Brown. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is our submission to the Select Committee, Water Services Legislation Bill. We have we have Sharon here. Welcome, Sharon. And Dawn, I was thinking Dawn would be coming to introduce the items. So Group Manager Dawn Ingalls.
Morena koutou. The Water Services Legislation Bill is extensive, and our report attempts to highlight those areas that staff believe are sort of key issues for Waipa. I also note that just over the weekend, Communities for Local Democracy have shared their draft or proposed submission on this bill, and that will be appended to the minutes of this meeting. And it's suggested that we've now received that submission, that a new sentence be added which acknowledges to our recommendation, which acknowledges and added to our submission, which acknowledges and endorses that the Communities for Local Democracy submission. So the suggestion is that the committee consider that. Further on page 163 of your agenda, the second to last recommendation with respect to the Utilities Access Act should include further wording that the water services entities actually need to be nominated as utility organisations as defined by the Utilities Access Act 2010. So that was inadvertently missed from that recommendation. Otherwise, happy to take any questions. Just I note that Malcolm Alexander from Yule Alexander and on behalf of Communities for Local Democracy is present virtually with us today. And so if there are any queries on the Communities for Local Democracy submission, he is available, although specifically Malcolm is primarily here to speak to the next item, the Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection bill. So, but yeah, welcome any questions on the Water Services Legislation Bill submission.
Thank you, Dawn. So just for councillors to note, we've got a amended recommendation for this item. If you want to take a read and make sure you're happy with that. In the meantime, we'll take questions. Councillor Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Well done on this, and I certainly found that the background that you provided was quite extensive and identified a large number of issues with the legislation. I'm wondering, the recommendations that you've got, they're only over a page and a little bit, trying to capture what you've identified in 12 pages of issues. It's not a question, but a statement. And certainly on page 4 or 151 of the agenda, when it talks about stormwater, and it says the stormwater network forming part of water services is restricted to the urban area only. So it's unclear how WSE could achieve their objectives relating to stormwater in the review rural environment. Could you please tell me briefly how they would have handled the stormwater issues of the last couple of weeks?
Councillor Gordon, through the chair, that's a great question. I think that in terms of the rainfall event that we've experienced and some of the tragic outcomes from it are, to use a horrid word, unprecedented in terms of it, and that stormwater systems will always have finite capacity. In terms of the water services entity, there is always, I guess, a risk in terms of how connected systems need to be to work effectively for communities, and it will be intrinsic, I suppose, on the water services entity and managing urban stormwater to be as well connected to their community emergency management and all of those systems to ensure the safety of the community, but very challenging.
Yeah, indeed. And then it's a question on page 152, when you're talking about the revenue generation of these entities to pay for the actual expenses and the costs that are incurred. And my perception of that comment is that we as Waipa would have to pay for some of the costs involved in the solving of all of the water issues that are on a much larger and wider geographical area. So really for our ratepayers, this could be quite a major cost increase. Is my interpretation correct?
Through the chair, the way I read the bill, the expectation is that it's we would act as a recovery agent on behalf of the water services entities, but that it would be anticipated that the costs that they would be looking to charge our communities would be similar to that is charged at present. But then, as I say, the mechanism is incorporated into the bill in case the water services entity isn't able to have the business processes in place to be able to do the recovery themselves, and therefore they would be requesting council to do that recovery.
And if they did set charges, what opportunity would we have as a local authority to actually have a reaction or input or review of those proposed charges?
Through the chair, I would anticipate that the more strategic nature of our relationship with the entity would require that we would be having input to the statement of expectations, supporting the statement of intent, the funding and financing policy within the water services entity. So at that point, we would be able to liaise to confirm what those charges were and what the mechanism of recovery would be.
That's not specifically identified within the bill.
It's a matter of, I believe, having to look across all of the bills that are being, the Water Services Act, the Water Service Legislation Bill, in terms of what the business process would be. But yeah, at this stage, without a constitution and the like being developed, it is purely my expectation, I believe, at this stage.
So, I mean, we've already got an example of an act, the RMA Act, which has kind of grown and grown and grown into a mammoth animal, and this could well grow into the same.
Through the chair, possibly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. I guess I take I do take some comfort in the fact that a number of councils, or all councils almost, are involved in this. So I like to think that there's some great brains going into the submission process. So are there any other questions around our submission? Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. I do think that the submission's been put together really well. It covers so much, unfortunately, because it shows the flawed legislation as it's drafted at the moment. I'm really concerned, though, with some other areas. There's so many to list, but I'm just going to focus on two, really. The first is that looking at section 349 of the bill, it's clear that the way DCs are going to be collected, that it's going to allow developers to avoid paying that capital cost of water's infrastructure themselves and allow it to be passed on to the purchaser, or even existing property owners. If there's some kind of upgrade, suddenly they're going to be billed for that without, I don't think they're going to have any input in it at all. And so for Waipa, who has had a policy where saying growth pays for growth, and that's meant that developers have paid the cost of new water infrastructure, and really residents have paid the ongoing, I suppose the consumption costs or whatever. So that in itself is a massive shift in where costs fall, which consumers are having absolutely no say in it. Okay. Now I did some working out on our last LTP. It could increase water costs by 25% for our current users. And for this legislation to be mooted or put forward as a way to save costs and reduce them, perhaps overall in the whole system, but when you've got a massive shift in where those costs have been previously picked up and now they're shifted to, well, the consumer, because they're the easiest one to charge, that is just totally unjust. So I'm really worried about that. I don't know if that could be included in the submission, but I'm certainly not very happy about it. And the second point was that it's mentioned in the next of submission, that item, that the legislation has had massive changes to the original bill. And in fact, there have been 18 new functions added to what a water services entity can do. I had a look at those, and one of them is to maintain and support the capability of the water services sector. And this covers research, education, training, and collaboration. At the moment, that's not paid for by water consumers, but it will be now, I presume. And that in itself is really concerning. Again, another way that bureaucracy is expanding exponentially, and who's going to have to pay for it? But yeah, the water consumer. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? No, okay, we've got a new recommendation up there. Of course, this is just enabling the C4LD submission to be included in our submission if there's some comments there that we want to include. So I'm very happy with the change of the recommendation. If everybody else is, that will be good. Oh, and there's some more to come.
Sorry, Madam Chair, the second part is the inclusion of that piece that I noted about the Utilities Act and the nomination. So
yes, okay,
that amendment as well, sorry. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's now up on the screen for elected members to read. Can everyone read that? Feel free to come up to the screen if you feel you need to. Oh, that's even better. Thank you for the enlargement for some of us. I know that I can look behind me if I need to. So if there's no other changes to that, can I please have a mover and a seconder for the entire recommendation? So Susan's going to move, Lou's going to second, all in favour? Carried. Excellent, thank you everyone. All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is our Water Services Economic and Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill. And Dawn is going to stay in the seat. And this is where we'll be introducing Malcolm, I believe, for any questions that the members may have and for him to outline as well. So over to you, Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we able to see Malcolm on the screen? Fabulous. Morena, Malcolm.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, as I say, over the weekend, we received a revised submission from the Communities for a Local Democracy group. It is a very technical bill in terms of it, and so therefore staff have not prepared a separate submission, but have looked to acknowledge and endorse the Communities for Local Democracy submission around the bill. So I don't know, Malcolm, if you want to provide any insights, or if you're just happy to take questions.
Maybe just a couple of observations. Of the two bills, we have focused on this one on the basis that it is technical and it is a new set of arrangements for the sector, though common in other network utilities. The other bill we saw as sort of an extension of the previous now act, and we've made some observations on that. But this we've focused on, again, because of that technical nature and because of that, whatever the ultimate structural model that comes out in terms of water infrastructure delivery. By that I mean the government's version or some alteration to it, or event that the opposition is successful at the general election, their version, both of the main parties endorse economic regulation. Therefore, we're focused on this to ensure that that the model is as good as it can be.
Thank you for that, Malcolm. Okay, do we have any questions around this? I think it's a very topical issue right now. Claire, I suspect you've got 4 pages. So maybe we'll just, Mike, did you have an initial question? And then we'll, yeah.
I'll start. Mine will be more simple, probably. Kia ora, Malcolm. Hey, just a couple of general questions, really. One is just with the 30 councils that are involved in the
Membership.
Yep. I just note that there's really no large councils in there, or, like significant city councils, etc. So just a comment on that and the why. I mean, I understand the Auckland bit, but the rest. And the other one is there any feel around the new minister and what difference that might make, or is that an underlying indication from the government that these submissions actually might be listened to? Just to comment on that.
To your first question, until immediately prior to the local body elections, Christchurch City Council was a member of C4LD and an active participant sitting on the governance bodies of C4LD. It took a vote immediately preceding the local body election to leave C4LD. As I do have to ask them. My understanding is because at that stage the bulk of the work was done. As to the others, well, each individual council made their own decisions about how they wish to progress their interactions with the government on their reform process. Large councils tend to have greater resources, probably, and can therefore are in a position to engage better. The others, I know some metropolitan councils are supportive of the government's proposal. So I think it's an individual council position. On the second question, that again is speculative as well. The now Prime Minister has indicated that there's a policy reset coming, including, as I understand it, in the Three Waters reform, but there's no clarity on what that might entail. And so we've simply taken the view that we're dealing with the bill that is in front of us. If that changes that in a way that's protective of community property rights, then we will be supportive of that. The core issue that Communities for Local Democracy members have had is what we regard as the expropriation of property rights without compensation. If that alters, and we have put up a substantive alternative model to the Financial Expenditure Select Committee last year, and if the government went along those lines, we'd be broadly happy with that. But again, we'll have to wait and see.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Okay, other questions, Claire?
Thanks, Malcolm. I really appreciate the intense effort that's gone into doing such a technical submission. And I think the points that have been raised have been really great. I just wanted to endorse your, I suppose, stance about the total importance of transparency, particularly around the harmonisation and cross-subsidisation. And I just wanted to, one suggestion for an addition was about allowing participation in decision-making. Like I had a look at the Lisbon Charter, which is an international best practice, for water providers. And they talk about fruitful civic participation and actively participating in decisions, so that it's not just about engagement, it's not just about having consumer forums or things like that, it's at a higher level. And I think that's what our communities deserve and want. Yeah. And then again, just agreeing, you made some good points about dispute resolution and things like that, with that, I suppose using those existing entities or agencies that we've got here, because I can also see that is going to be critical. I remember the news item about a woman in Auckland who received, a bill for $2,000 for her water, her drinking water, and an elderly lady, she knew it was wrong, but they could not get it resolved until she'd paid the bill. And, her daughter, who was a lawyer, was able to intervene, but not everyone is lucky in those family circumstances. And we need really strong protections when you've got such a large entity that is just used to, making the rules and making sure that they're followed. Yeah. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Did you want to respond, Malcolm?
Yes, if I may, on the second point first, the Economic Regulation Bill does provide for the disputes resolution process. I imagine what will happen is and these are common in utility industry. So there's an electricity one and there's a telecommunications one, for example. I would probably the most effective and efficient way of dealing with it is to extend the ambit of that existing disputes resolution approach to water. Yes, you're quite correct, Councillor. There's an imbalance of power between a large utility and a consumer, particularly a consumer who that by and large lacks sophistication to engage with those sort of technical debates. So the disputes resolution process allows effective challenge to potentially poor decisions in some cases. They're generally around billing, disconnections, those sorts of things. So the bill does provide for that and we endorse that. On the other one, yes, I hear your point about public participation. This model does not allow for that. This is essentially a corporate model. By and large, decisions will be made at a management and board level, probably. There is, I think, as Dawn made the point earlier, there is obviously at a higher level ability to participate in SOI setting and things like that. But by and large, commercial decisions around price are likely to be left with the company. They may consult and get a sense of what's fair and possible and needed from a capital investment point of view, but the decision will be essentially theirs. Hence the need for the Economic Regulation Bill, which puts from a competition policy point of view, puts the Commerce Commission as the protector of consumer interests and to ensure that pricing is appropriate to the needs, go down the price quality path. So that's the model.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, through the chair, Malcolm. Firstly, thank you very much for the work that you're doing, and I'm very much in support. One of the issues that I'd like to raise quite quickly is that transition period. There's been very little allowance in the transition between the entity and our council. So there's not been a lot there. The second point is to raise that the Water Services Entities Act actually takes away a lot of the benefits of the Services Economic and Efficiency Act. So they don't cooperate or even cooperate with each other. When you look at these two acts, it seems to me that one actually detracts from the other. I'd just like your thoughts on that.
So you're referring, Councillor, to the now Water Service Entities Act and the proposed Economic Regulation Bill, to be clear?
Sorry, Councillor Brown, can you put your button on?
Yeah, I find it hard to hear, sorry.
Yeah, no, it was my fault. I had it turned off. It undermines the Services Efficiency Act as it's come. So the two seem to be shoehorned together without actually being linked together.
Yeah, there is an element of that, though they're not by definition contradictory in my view. The Entities Act, supported by the rather extensive amendment bill in the Water Services Legislation Bill, so the two will be read together if indeed it is passed together. So they establish the entities and the system and so on and so forth. The Economic Efficiency Bill is designed to regulate their activity. So they're not incompatible in that sense. However, there are issues which we point out in our submission, for example, around the applicability of a price quality regulation to what are non-profit entities. Generally, economic regulation is about ensuring that prices resulting in profits are appropriate. We think the focus on information disclosure will be the way to go. So think of it as the Commerce Commission sitting over as the watchdog on these four new entities who will be substantial companies in New Zealand context. So that they're not per se contradictory, from understanding your question correctly, but there is an element of finesse that's going to be required to make these two things work properly. In terms of the time frame that you referred to, yes, my own view is that the transition time frame is heroic.
Love that new word. Okay, that will start to feature Malcolm, I'm sure. Okay, are there any other questions for Malcolm around the table? No? Okay. Hey, look, thank you very, very much for assisting us today. I think that, yeah, we've been able to ask you all the questions that we felt were kind of out there at the moment. And yeah, I'm not going to say we're starting to feel more comfortable because I'm not too sure that's the right word. It's certainly not. But anyway, good to have your expertise available to us. I really appreciate that. Dawn, did you want to? Dawn, did you have any closing comments?
Just with reference to the recommendation in front of you today, at the moment it notes that we had the draft submission at that stage as Appendix 1. Having received that final draft over the weekend, we're looking to endorse and acknowledge that document, receiving it today and including it. So I think Jo's just doing her magic wordsmithing.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got an amended recommendation up on the screen for everyone to take a look at, but I think that's very straightforward again as before, just making sure that we're including yeah, some of the new information that's just come to us via that group. So, okay, so Councillor Brown's going to move and someone to second, please. Councillor Pettit, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're going to move to we need a resolution now to exclude the public. We have our next item is public excluded. So Mayor Susan's moving.